Rolex SA and its subsidiary Montres Tudor SA design, manufacture, distribute and service wristwatches sold under the Rolex and Tudor brands. Founded by Hans Wilsdorf and Alfred Davis in London, England in 1905 as Wilsdorf and Davis, Rolex moved its base of operations to Geneva, Switzerland in 1919. Forbes ranked Rolex No. 57 on its 2012 list of the world's most powerful global brands. Rolex is the largest single luxury watch brand, producing about 2,000 watches per day, with estimated 2012 revenues of $7.4 billion. History: Hans Wilsdorf and his brother-in-law, Alfred Davis, founded Wilsdorf and Davis, the company that would eventually become Rolex SA, in London, England in 1905. Wilsdorf and Davis' main business at the time was importing Hermann Aegler's Swiss movements to England and placing them in quality watch cases made by Denison and others. These early wristwatches were sold to jewelers, who then put their own names on the dial. The earliest watches from Wilsdorf and Davis were usually hallmark W&D inside the caseback. In 1908, Wilsdorf registered the trademark Rolex, and opened an office in La Chaux-de-Fonds, Switzerland. The company name Rolex was registered on November 15, 1915. The book The Best of Time, Rolex Wristwatches, An Unauthorized History by Geoffrey P. Hess and James Dowling says that the name was just made up. One story, never confirmed by Wilsdorf, is that the name came from the French phrase horlogerie exquise, meaning exquisite clockwork, or as a contraction of horological excellence. Wilsdorf was said to want his watch brand's name to be easily pronounceable in any language. He also thought that the name Rolex was onomatopoeic, sounding like a watch being wound. It is easily pronounceable in many languages and, as all letters have the same size, allows to be written symmetrically. It was also short enough to fit on the face of a watch. In 1914, Kew Observatory awarded a Rolex watch a Class A Precision Certificate, a distinction which was normally awarded exclusively to marine chronometers. In 1919, Wilsdorf left England due to wartime taxes levied on luxury import as well as export duties on the silver and gold used for the watch cases driving costs too high and moved the company to Geneva, Switzerland, where it was established as the Rolex Watch Company. Its name was later changed to Montres Rolex SA and finally Rolex SA. Upon the death of his wife in 1944, Wilsdorf established the Hans Wilsdorf Foundation in which he left all of his Rolex shares, making sure that some of the company's income would go to charity. The company is still owned by a private trust and shares are not traded on any stock exchange. In December 2008, the abrupt departure of chief executive Patrick Uniger, for a personal reassance was followed by a denial by the company that it had lost £1 billion Swiss francs invested with Bernard Madoff, the American asset manager who pleaded guilty to an approximately £30 billion worldwide Ponzi scheme fraud. Uniger died March 5, 2013, after a long illness, according to an official statement issued by Rolex SA. Today, Rolex watches are popularly considered status symbols. Innovations: among the company's innovations are, the first waterproof wristwatch Oyster, 1926, the first wristwatch with an automatically changing date on the dial, the first wristwatch case waterproof to 100 am, the first wristwatch to show 2 time zones at once, the first wristwatch with an automatically changing day and date on the dial, the first watchmaker to earn chronometer certification for a wristwatch, automatic movements. The first self-winding Rolex wristwatch was offered to the public in 1931, preceded to the market by Harwood which patented the design in 1923 and produced the first self-winding watch in 1928, powered by an internal mechanism that used the movement of the wearer's arm. This not only made watch winding unnecessary, but kept the power from the mainspring more consistent, resulting in more reliable timekeeping. Quartz movements: Rolex participated in the development of the original quartz watch movements. Although Rolex has made very few quartz models for its Oyster line, the company's engineers were instrumental in design and implementation of the technology during the late 1960s and early 1970s. In 1968, Rolex collaborated with a consortium of 16 Swiss watch manufacturers to develop the beta 21 quartz movement used in their Rolex Quartz Date 5100. Within about 5 years of research, design, and development, Rolex created the clean slate 5035/5055 movement that would eventually power the Rolex Oyster Quartz. Water-resistant cases. Rolex was also the first watch company to create a water-resistant wristwatch that could withstand pressure to a depth of 100 am. Wilsdorf even had a specially made Rolex watch attached to the side of the Trieste bathyscaphe, which went to the bottom of the Mariana Trench. The watch survived and tested as having kept perfect time during its descent and ascent. This was confirmed by a telegram sent to Rolex the following day saying, "I'm happy to confirm that even at 11,000 meters your watch is as precise as on the surface. Best regards, Jacques Piccard." Collections. Rolex produced specific models suitable for the extremes of deep-sea diving, mountain climbing and aviation. Early sports models included the Rolex Submariner and the Rolex Oyster Perpetual Date Sea Dweller. The latter watch is a helium release valve, co-invented with Swiss watchmaker Doxa, to release helium gas buildup during decompression. The Explorer and Explorer II were developed specifically for explorers who would navigate rough terrain, such as the world-famous Mount Everest expeditions. Another iconic model is the Rolex GMT Master, which was originally developed in 1954 at the request of Pan Am Airways to provide its crews with a dual time watch that could be used to display GMT, which is the international time standard for aviation and was needed for astronavigation during longer flights. Certified chronometers. Rolex is the largest manufacturer of Swiss-made certified chronometers. In 2005, more than half the annual production of COSC-certified watches were Rolex's. To date, Rolex still holds the record for the most certified chronometer movements in the category of wristwatches. Ceramic bezels. The company is now starting to introduce ceramic bezels across the range of professional sports watches. They are available on the Submariner, Sea Dweller Deep Sea, GMT Master II and Daytona models. The ceramic bezel is not influenced by UV light and is very scratch-resistant. Brands. Rolex SA offers products under the Rolex and Tudor brands. Tudor. Montres Tudor SA has designed, manufactured and marketed Tudor brand watches since March 6, 1946. Rolex founder Hans Wilsdorf conceived of the Tudor watch company to create a product for authorized Rolex dealers to sell that offered the reliability and dependability of a Rolex, but at a lower price. Tudor brand watches are manufactured by Montres Tudor SA using movement supplied by ETAZAR. Tudor brand watches are marketed and sold in most countries around the world including the United States, Australia, Canada, India, Mexico, South Africa, most countries in Europe, South Asia, the Middle East and countries South America, particularly Brazil, Argentina and Venezuela. Montres Tudor SA discontinued sales of Tudor-branded watches in the United States in 2004. Tudor returned to the United States market in the summer of 2013. Rolex watch models. Rolex has 3 watch lines, Oyster Perpetual, Professional and Cellini, and the primary bracelets for the Oyster line are named Jubilee, Oyster and President. Modern models. The name of the watch lines and catalogs is often Rolex Oyster Perpetual, or Rolex. Rolex Oyster and Oyster Perpetual are generic names and not specific product lines, except for the 36mm Oyster Perpetual model, which goes by no other name and is a model unto itself. According to reviews, the Air King is the least expensive member of the Oyster Perpetual family and is meant for understated elegance and simplicity. The date is related to the Air King but adds a date display. Certain models from the Date and Datejust are almost identical. However, the Datejust has a 36mm case and a 20mm bracelet compared to the Date's 34mm case and 19mm bracelet. Modern versions of the Oyster Perpetual Date and Datejust models share Rolex's 3135 movement, with the most recent change to the 3135 movement being the introduction of Rolex's Parachrom Blair hairspring, which provides increased accuracy. As the Date and Datejust share a movement, both have the ability to adjust the date forward one day at a time without adjusting the time. This feature is not confined to the Datejust. The Datejust is available in a wider range of metals and has a greater range of dials available. Air King date available for 1988, date, Oyster Perpetual, Datejust 2, Datejust Turnograph, Lady Datejust Pearlmaster, Daytona, Paul Newman Daytona. Day-Date 2, Day-Date Oyster Perpetual, Explorer, Explorer 2, GMT Master 2, Masterpiece, Milgauss, Oyster Quartz, Sea Dweller Deep Sea, Sky Dweller, Submariner, Turnograph, Yachtmaster 2, Cellini Models, Quartz Ladies, Quartz Men's, Selenium, Cestello Ladies, Cestello Men's, Danois Mensuge, Prince. Pricing: Rolex watches vary in price according to the model and the materials used. In the UK, the retail price for the highly sought-after stainless steel Pilot's range starts from GBP £5,250. Diamond inlay watches go for considerably more. The book Vintage Wristwatches by Antiques Roadshow's Rain Haynes listed a price estimate of Rolex watches that ranged between $650 and $75,000, while listing Tudors between $250 and $9,000. The most expensive Rolex ever produced by the Rolex factory was the GMT ICE reference 116769 TBO with a retail price of $485,350. A Forbes magazine article on the Swiss watch industry compared the retail value of Rolexes to that of competing brands Corum, Universal Geneva and IWC. Significant events: Rolex is the official timekeeper of Wimbledon and the Australian Open Tennis Grand Slams. In golf, it is the official timekeeper for two of the four majors, the Open Championship and the U.S. Open. The presenting sponsor for one of the five senior majors, the Senior Open Championship. And the official sponsor of the Women's World Golf Rankings. They are also the title sponsor to the 24 Hours of Daytona, from which the Daytona model takes its name, along with the Rolex Sports Car Series. In 2013, Rolex became the official timekeeper to the FIA Formula One Motor Racing Championship. Rolex has also been the official timekeeper to the Le Mans 24 Hours motor race since 2001. Jacques Piccard and Don Walsh had a specially designed experimental Rolex Oyster Perpetual Deep Sea Special strapped to the outside of their bathyscaphe during the 1960 Challenger Deep/Mariana Trench dive to a world record depth of 10,916 meters. When James Cameron conducted a similar dive in 2012, a specially designed and manufactured Rolex Oyster Perpetual Sea Dweller Deep Sea Challenge watch was being worn by his submarine's robotic arm. Tenzing Norgay and other members of the Hillary expedition wore Rolex Oysters in 1953 at altitude 8,848 m on Mount Everest, while there are attestations and speculation that Sir Edmund Hillary either carried a Smith's Deluxe or a Rolex to the summit, or both. Mercedes Glietz was the first British woman to swim the English Channel on October 7, 1927. But, as John E. Brozek points out in his article The Vindication Swim, Mercedes Glietz and Rolex Take the Plunge, some doubts were cast on her achievement when a hoaxer claimed to have made a faster swim only 4 days later. To silence her critics, Mercedes Glietz attempted a repeat swim on October 21 in the full glare of publicity, thus touted the Vindication Swim. Hans Wilsdorf knew a good marketing opportunity when he saw one and offered her one of the earliest Rolex Oysters if she would wear it during the attempt. After more than 10 hours, in water that was much colder than during her first swim, she was pulled from the sea semi-conscious 7 miles short of her goal. It was during this swim that she wore the Rolex watch, contrary to popular opinion. Although she did not complete the second crossing, a journalist for The Times wrote, having regard to the general conditions, the endurance of Miss Glietz surprised the doctors, journalists and experts who were present, for it seemed unlikely that she would be able to withstand the cold for so long. It was a good performance. This silenced the doubters and Mercedes Glietz was hailed as a heroine. As she sat in the boat, the same journalist made a discovery and reported it as follows: hanging round her neck by a ribbon on this swim, Miss Glietz carried a small gold watch, which was found this evening to have kept good time throughout. When examined closely, the watch was found to be in perfect condition, dry inside and ticking away as if nothing had happened. 1 month later, on November 24, 1927, Wilsdorf launched the Rolex Oyster watch in the United Kingdom as the focal point of a full front-page Rolex advert in the Daily Mail, and the Rolex Oyster began its rise to fame. The Vienna Herald described the 1969 Apollo moon landing as an event almost as significant as the time a woman swam most of the English Channel with a waterproof watch on. Watches for POWs and help in the Great Escape. By the start of World War II, Rolex watches had already acquired enough prestige that Royal Air Force pilots bought them to replace their inferior standard-issue watches. However, when captured and sent to POW camps, their watches were confiscated. When Hans Wilsdorf heard of this, he offered to replace all watches that had been confiscated and not require payment until the end of the war, if the officers would write to Rolex and explain the circumstances of their loss and where they were being held. Wilsdorf, believing that their word was their bond, was in personal charge of the scheme. As a result of this, an estimated 3,000 Rolex watches were ordered by British officers in the Oflag 7B POW camp in Bavaria alone. This had the effect of raising the morale among the Allied POWs because it indicated that Wilsdorf did not believe that the Nazis would win the war. American servicemen heard about this when stationed in Europe during WWII, and this helped open up the American market to Rolex after the war. On March 10, 1943, while still a prisoner of war, Corporal Clive James Nutting, one of the organizers of the Great Escape, ordered a stainless steel Rolex Oyster 3525 chronograph by mail directly from Hans Wilsdorf in Geneva, intending to pay for it with money he saved working as a shoemaker at the camp. The watch was delivered to Stalag Luft 3 on July 10 that year, along with a note from Wilsdorf apologizing for any delay in processing the order and explaining that an English gentleman such as Corporal Nutting should not even think about paying for the watch before the end of the war. Wilsdorf is reported to have been impressed with Nutting because, although not an officer, he had ordered the expensive Rolex 3525 Oyster chronograph while most other prisoners ordered the much cheaper Rolex Speed King model, which was popular because of his small size. The watch is believed to have been ordered specifically to be used in the Great Escape when, as a chronograph, it could have been used to time patrols of prison guards or time the 76 ill-fated escapees through Tunnel Harry on March 24, 1944. Eventually, after the war, Nutting was sent an invoice of only £15 for the watch, because of currency export controls in England at the time. The watch and associated correspondence between Wilsdorf and Nutting were sold at auction for £66,000 in May 2007, while at an earlier auction on September 2006 the same watch fetched $54,000 Australian dollars. Nutting served as a consultant for both the 1950 film The Wooden Horse and the 1963 film The Great Escape. Both films were based on actual escapes which took place at Stalag Luft 3. It was also reported that in November 2013 the Rolex Speed King owned by Flight Lieutenant Gerald Impson during the Great Escape was sold for £60,000. Murder investigation. In a famous murder case, the Rolex on Ronald Platt's wrist eventually led to the arrest of his murderer, Albert Johnson Walker, a financial planner who had fled from Canada when he was charged with 18 counts of fraud, theft, and money laundering. When the body was found in the English Channel in 1996 by a fisherman named John Kuprick, a Rolex wristwatch was the only identifiable object on the body. Since the Rolex movement had a serial number and was engraved with special markings every time it was serviced, British police traced the service records from Rolex and identified the owner of the watch as Ronald Platt. In addition, British police were able to determine the date of death by examining the date on the watch calendar. Since the Rolex movement was fully waterproof and had a reserve of 2 to 3 days of operation when inactive, they were able to determine the time of death within a small margin of error. Counterfeits. Rolex watches are frequently counterfeited, often illegally sold on the street and online. Hans Wilsdorf Foundation. Rolex SA is owned by the privately held Hans Wilsdorf Foundation, which is registered as a charity and does not pay corporate tax. Virginie Chevalier, a spokesman for Rolex in Geneva, declines to say what evidence is available to confirm that the Wilsdorf Foundation makes charitable donations. Gallery. See also: Rolex Awards for Enterprise, Rolex Mentor and Proto Copyright GA Copyright Arts Initiative, Rolex Tower, List of watch manufacturers, references. External links, official website.